Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, firstly, thank you for the courage that you and your teams have exuded during COVID-19 when we were living in this fear of the unknown. We cannot thank you enough for all of the service that you all have given to the clients with their well-being. So thank you so much. Our next topic of the morning is advocacy. The local homeless response system, the Way Home, is making plans to become more active advocates for people experiencing homelessness, especially at the Texas State Legislature. Today, we've invited an ally from the network of behavioral health providers to tell us about some of the advocacy work they did in the last session and some overlapping areas of interest to demonstrate why it's so important to engage. Sydney Carter is the program and policy coordinator at the network of behavioral health providers. Sydney has led legislative efforts and has helped to build up NBHP's policy expansion reach. 3 of NBHP's priority bills relating to mental health and substance use disorders passed last session, thanks in part to her work. Please join me in welcoming Sydney Carter. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. I will admit I'm having a little bit of imposter syndrome speaking with all these amazing speakers. So I really appreciate y'all being here and listening to a little bit about advocacy. So I'm going to try to see if this clicker will work. So next. Okay, great. So again, my name is Sydney Carter. I'm with the Network of Behavioral Health Providers, and we are a collaborative of over 40 mental health and substance use disorder service providers across the greater Houston area. And we're blessed to have a lot of our members here today. I'm so excited to see a lot of you. And I'm very excited to speak to y'all about policy, advocacy, and opportunities for homelessness and housing. Okay, let's make sure it doesn't go. Okay, so here is what I'm going to cover today. So I am going to talk about advocacy and its importance, as well as some of the work we did during the last legislative session around advocacy at the Texas Capitol, as well as our priority issues that are relevant to a lot of you all. And I'll go into some of the issues that we were able to have successes in, as in bills that passed. Also, some future opportunities relating to homelessness and housing. Go over a little bit about the Texas legislature online website, which is where it's kind of like the go-to shop for advocacy at the state level. Also going through how to look up legislators at the state and local level, which is really important to all of our work. And kind of like I mentioned, the local level city council and commissioners court, how to communicate with legislators, and then some next steps. And I know that there could be a variety of levels of who has engaged in advocacy and at what level. So this is going to be kind of what I would consider a 101 level. And if you have any further questions, I would love to talk more about this. I love this work and I'm happy to provide any assistance I can in this area. So my first slide has to do with advocacy. Of course, the definition at the top by the Alliance for Justice. They're an awesome organization that does a lot around the legalities of advocacy and lobbying. You can learn a lot from them. But so I wanted to start with what it looks like to be an advocate. So firstly, advocacy is anything that is trying to make influence on an issue. So for example, if you're speaking with legislators at any level, sharing your story, sharing facts, trying to convince them that your issue is important is really powerful. And I and many people that I've worked with have seen it happen and seen change occur. Legislators can change their minds on issues no matter what side of the aisle they might traditionally be on. With proper advocacy, they can change their mind. We've seen it happen and we've been lucky enough to have a lot of issues passed because of advocacy. And the last point on this slide has to do with 501c3s, which is what many of your organizations are. We can and should advocate. I think there's a little bit of miscommunication around advocacy versus lobbying, and anyone is allowed to advocate, and it's powerful. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, the last point under that, considering your work day. So I bet a lot of y'all go throughout your work day and there's some kind of regulation or little annoying thing that impinges on your ability to serve clients. And you might just kind of be thinking, oh, I wish I could get around this regulation or this legality, and it's making a negative impact on how I can serve my clients. Advocacy is a way to help make change in that area. You can advocate to better serve your clients. Let's see if I stand here. Okay, great. So these are the priority issues that NBHP advocated for during the last legislative session, which is about January through May every 2 years in Texas. So it'll be coming up again in January 2023. This is from 2021. So our 5 issues, of course, you'll see a lot of the words increased are starting because we always need increases in every area in behavioral health. So the issues have to do with funding, increasing telehealth options, increasing jail diversion options, increasing recovery housing, which is relevant, to our work here today, and expanding Medicaid. So these are some policy wins we would consider from last session. These are 3 bills that we advocated for, we testified for at the Capitol across numerous points in the bill's life. So HB's 4, HB 133, and HB 707. HB 4 had to do with that telehealth piece, with increasing access to telehealth. HB 133 had to do with postpartum care for mothers, including care for postpartum depression, so mental health care. And HB 707 related to a study about the current state of recovery housing in our state, which is usually the first step towards more meaningful changes. The state will pass a study. Okay, we'll do a study on what this is, and then we could go to further action. So though it might not sound like a big deal, it really is, because it's starting to show the state how important recovery housing is and bring light to housing. I might need to stand here to change the slide. Okay, great. So this slide is some sample data we have presented to legislators relating to housing. So these 3 points are examples of what I have shared with legislators, kind of helping to convince them of my point of why housing is important, why it is something that they should care about, should pay attention to. So I think a lot of us might be familiar with some of these statistics. So the first point about how around 53% of people experiencing homelessness have co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. If Councilmember Thomas was here, she has heard me say this to her and all the city council members, all the commissioners core members, all the Houston delegation at the state level. And the second and third stats have to do kind of with the cost effectiveness of housing someone versus them experiencing homelessness with any type of serious mental illness, et cetera. And the last point is an example of what we would specifically ask from legislators. So we have had this on our one pager, as well as kind of just stating it to them. The legislature should leverage federal funding to expand housing as well as short and long-term housing options. So having a specific ask is another really important point. These are some other bills from the last session that had to do with housing, recovery housing, permanent supportive housing, homelessness, et cetera, that I think could be future opportunities for this coming session in January. So if you have access to these slides after, I believe these links will be clickable, as well as the policy wins slide. You can learn more about them on the Texas Legislature website that I will go over in this presentation as well. So these are just some bills that have relevance to our work that could come up again in the next session, or could be areas that we advocate for at the next session. So now, like I mentioned, I want to go over the Texas Legislature online website. This is where you can basically learn everything about advocacy at the state level. So I will go here. So this is the Texas Legislature online website. I would like to be able to click the link and show you all this. That is what I would typically do at this presentation, but I hope that these screenshots do show enough kind of explanation. And if you would like any type of tutorial on this website, like I mentioned, I'm happy to do that. It is seriously no problem. So this is the website for the state. You can see on the left-hand side the House and Senate. You can click on their home pages. You can see the different committees on the House and Senate side. You can see who are members of those committees in terms of House of Representative members and senators. You can also look in the middle top section for specific bills. Like I mentioned, HBs 4, 133, and 707. And I should have said before, HB stands for House Bill and SB would be Senate Bill if you ever see that come up. So there's a lot of stuff you can do on this website. As well as the bottom right, it's kind of cut off, but who represents me, you're able to look up your legislators and learn who you might want to meet with depending on your address or your agency's address, etc. So this is an expansion of the Who Represents Me section of the website. So this is the address for NBHP, the Network of Behavioral Health Providers address. And we can see Congressman Al Green is our US representative, which would be the same for a lot of us, and our state representative, Sean Thierry, and our state senator, Boris Miles. So you can easily see that from this map, and you can look up any address. So this is an example of what would pop up if I looked at a specific representative. This is Representative Cristina Morales, and she is representing District 145. And so you can see this for any member of the House or Senate. You can see a ton of information on this section of the website. We can see her capital address, her regional address. We can look at what bills she has authored or sponsored and kind of go through that to see what they might be supportive of, what they have been supportive of in the past, et cetera, which can help learn who your allies are, who your potential opponents could be on an issue, et cetera. You can see a biography about them. So there's just a lot of information here about your representatives. This is the committees tab of that same page. So you can see the different committees, and I'll go into this a little bit later about what might be relevant. So for example, when a bill is authored and written, it would then go to a committee. If it gets a committee hearing, that is an opportunity for advocacy. So for example, I just got an email this morning about, we're in the interim is what it's called. But during the session, this happens a lot more frequently. A bill is up for a hearing in a committee after it's been assigned. And so once it's in a committee hearing, you can go testify in person in Austin if you would like. You usually have 1 to 3 minutes, which seems short, but you're really able to condense the most important information and get the job done. If you don't want to go to Austin, you can also do written testimony. You can submit it, which usually does not have a word count limit or anything like that. Or you can drop a card of support is what it's called at the Capitol or online. And so there's a lot of different ways to engage, and you can do it as a member, kind of as a representative of your agency or as a private citizen. I'll talk about that as well. But I really want main point of this to kind of come across that anybody can and should engage in advocacy for issues that they care about, because it is really the most impactful way to make meaningful change. These are some different state level committees and departments that several of us have mentioned this morning already, so I don't want to go into it too in depth. But at the state level, the Texas House, the Urban Affairs Committee, the Texas Senate, the Local Government Committee, and the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, and more. So there, as bills, like I mentioned, go through 2 committee hearings, you are able to kind of just follow where they are. So it might not come up in a traditional committee. For example, many of the issues I would testify for are in health and human services, but there might be one that randomly comes up in local government or whatnot. So if I have to go to that, that's okay as well. This is the local level, city council, commissioners court, and the local city and county levels have their own housing departments as well. And this is an example. I testified in support of the Housing Navigation Center and the COVID Community Housing Program. And so did many of you. And that is a prime example of advocacy and how it does work. So those issues both passed thanks to a lot of your advocacy. There was a lot of opposition to those issues. And it kind of definitely shows how advocacy can make a change. So this is ways you can communicate with legislators through email, phone call, written letters, or advocacy alerts. This is a sample email I would have sent to a legislator in 2020. I just briefly introduced myself, my organization, my position, which you don't necessarily have to do. And then I just kept it brief. I said I would like to meet with you virtually at the time. It could be in person now about these issues. Please let me know some dates. And that's just how easy it can be. And they or someone at their staff will respond. And if they don't be afraid to email 2 or 3 or 4 times, because I have done that. And sometimes they do miss it. They're busy, you know, their emails are full. So it is okay to be diligent because they are your elected officials and you are able to speak to them. This is a sample for calling legislators. So saying, again, this is a voicemail, my name, my agency, why I want to speak to them and ask for some dates. That's a voicemail, just an example. But if I was speaking with them, if they did answer, they might try to start scheduling immediately. So definitely be ready to have some dates and times for that. Of course, leave your email, your phone number, all that at the voicemail. Snail mail, so physical mail, of course, all the representatives have state and regional addresses. You can send it there. If you would like, you can send them a letter. And then how to interact with a legislator. So you've got a meeting with them. Congratulations, whether it's virtual or in person. Make sure you follow some of these items to kind of make it an effective meeting. So going in with 2 to 3 people, if possible, 30 minutes, keeping it short and sweet. Make sure you go in with a plan for the meeting. You want to have data and points to back up your issue that you're wanting to talk to them about, and making sure that you arrive early, especially at the Capitol. You have to go through security. I'm not sure how long they will continue to require COVID testing, but that does take a little bit of time as well. So just making sure you are following time for the precautions. And if you are at the Capitol, it is huge and confusing, especially if you're new. So definitely taking time to look at a map, figuring out where the office is that you're going to. And a good point on this is bringing a one-pager, bringing something that they can keep, perhaps a business card, and making sure that if you don't know the answer to something during the meeting, just say you don't know. They much appreciate that compared to making up some type of data or something and say you'll get back to them with the answer to their question. So this is tips for taking action. Like I mentioned, you can take action as a private citizen or on behalf of your organization. If you are taking action on behalf of your organization, just make sure you are cleared to do so. You're allowed to advocate versus lobby. There is that difference. And like I mentioned, Alliance for Justice has a lot of good trainings on the legal aspects of that. This is an example of a legislative alert. So you all may have seen this from NBHP. When a bill reaches a certain point in the life cycle, it will go to where you can testify or you can do advocacy alerts, et cetera. And so you'll see these from NBHP, and you might see these from other organizations like change.org at a national level. And I would encourage you to participate because it is a way to kind of flood representatives with points on an issue and showing that people do care about it. So to wrap up, next steps, of course, I would like to ask you all to follow NBHP on social media as I post on there. I help run our accounts, and you can see some of our legislative work on there, but it'll mostly come through advocacy alerts and newsletters and emails, etc. Last slide. So this is my contact information. Like I said, thank you so much. Please feel free to email me if you would like to learn more about this. NBHP does do Advocacy 101 and 102 trainings on this. And also in any of my free time, I'm happy to answer any questions about this because it's good to kind of be trained on this and be ready for the upcoming legislative session in January. And learning in the interim is a really good time because things are a little bit slower. But with that, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'll be around for questions. Not at this moment, but I'll be sitting down. So thank you so much. I see Ashley. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Sydney. I actually just like the NBHP page, so can't wait to follow that. So at this time, we will take a short break. So please enjoy each other's company, and we will get the program back started at 10:30. Thank you so much.